Welcome to the Economy of the Universe. I'm your host, Leon Clark. Today's topic is the Electoral College. First, we're going to go over what it is. Following on from that, we'll look at why it was adopted. Then we'll discuss how it stands today, and finally, to what extent it should be reformed. The Electoral College is a process used for the election of the US President. 538 electors are appointed to the states, based on the number of seats they hold in the House and Senate, and 3 for Washington, D.C. California has 53 congressmen and 2 senators, therefore they get 55 electors. The state legislatures determine how the electors are chosen, so it doesn't have to be by a popular vote. The legislature could appoint the electors themselves, as many did in the early years of the Republic. The chosen electors then vote for president. If no presidential candidate receives a clear majority of the electoral votes, today the number is 270, the House of Representatives will choose a president, with each state's representation casting a single vote, regardless of the seats they hold. It's a pretty complex system. Today it's unpopular because it isn't representative of the popular vote, and it gives smaller states an advantage, because every state, regardless of population, has 2 senators and at least 1 congressman. In 5 elections, the Electoral College has elected a president who did not win the most popular votes, most recently in 2016, when Donald Trump was elected despite the fact that Hillary Clinton secured more votes. Many people feel it's outdated, undemocratic, and should be replaced by a popular vote. But before we go ahead and tear something down, we should understand why it's there in the first place. Why did the framers create this system instead of a national popular vote? Why did they create a system that proportionally favors smaller states? First, it's worth remembering that the states made the federal government, and as they were consenting into a union with other states, they still wanted their state to have a say regardless of population. Smaller states would not have ratified the Constitution if they did not feel that they had an appropriate level of political power and influence. Additionally, if a candidate had to win a wide range of states instead of the popular vote to be elected, they had to be appealing in many states. At the time of the founding, states had very different interests. By requiring a president to have gained substantial support across a range of states, the framers of the Constitution were giving the advantage to a moderate. If it were just by popular vote, it would be easy to go into cities and rile people up and pit one state against another in order to secure a majority. A system that required wide appeal meant that no regional faction would obtain the presidency. The framers didn't want the president to be a demagogue or a rabble-rouser. Some of the original purpose of the Electoral College has been eroded and lost over the years. Originally, the president and vice president weren't supposed to be running mates. The vice president would be whoever finished as runner-up to the president in the electoral vote count. John Adams was a runner-up in the election of 1788 and was therefore the vice president to George Washington. By the passage of the 12th Amendment in 1804, this was changed, so electors now vote separately for the 2 positions. The benefit of having the runner-up become the vice president is it helps to bring a national reconciliation after the election as a consolation for the losers, and ensures a different point of view in the administration to moderate the president. Another change to the Electoral College system came about as states moved to a winner-takes-all system. Instead of apportioning their electors to each district within a state, the states began to award all the electors to one candidate. Today, the candidate who wins a popular vote in Florida receives all 29 electors, instead of them being apportioned to the winner of each district as the founders envisioned. Alexander Hamilton even proposed a constitutional amendment to force a district-based system, instead of winner-takes-all. The main reason, however, that the framers created the Electoral College is because they were very wary of the dangers of direct democracy. They knew that everyone is greedy, emotional, and tribal. They knew that a politician who needs a mandate of the people would play to these desires and once in power, use the mandate of the people to justify violating the Constitution and the people's rights. The idea of using the national popular vote to elect the president is the polar opposite of the process the framers designed. There was no requirement for popular elections at all in the Constitution. State legislatures could appoint the electors as they saw fit. Of the elections that did take place, such a small portion of the public could vote that it's ridiculous to suggest it represented the will of the people. The electors themselves were intended to be somewhat independent, so they could vote against the popular will if they felt the wrong candidate was being chosen. The framers took every step calculated to diminish the influence that the people would hold over the presidency. However, what remains of the Electoral College system today is a shadow of the original blueprint, and its ongoing utility is therefore questionable. The structure around it has altered so much. All but 2 states now have winner-takes-all allocation, and all have a popular vote to determine the electors. Today, almost everyone over the age of 18 can vote. Furthermore, we now have an entrenched 2-party system, whereas at the adoption of the Constitution, there were no real political parties that had any infrastructure or influence. So much has changed around the Electoral College that it bears little resemblance to the system adopted by the framers. So what should we do today? As far as I can see, there are three options. The first option is to stick with the broken Electoral College. The second option is we switch to the national popular vote. The third option is to restore the Electoral College. I favour the latter. As the Electoral College has deteriorated, we have seen our presidents become more powerful, more willing to violate the Constitution, and more lacking in character. The president's job is to run the executive branch. They are not supposed to represent the will of the people. I believe three changes could restore the system and improve the politics of the country. The first change is to end the system of running mates by ending the separate vote for the vice president, giving electors one vote for president, with the runner-up becoming vice president. This would lower the hostility that surrounds election time and enable us to come together after elections. The second change is to end winner-takes-all allocation and instead mandate district allocation. This would produce a more balanced result and end the focus on swing states, painting a better picture of the national opinion. The third measure is to end the use of the popular vote for choosing electors and leave this to state legislatures, allowing them to use non-binding popular votes but reserve them the ultimate power of choosing electors. If the people don't vote for the president, they have less of an emotional investment, and therefore a more balanced and level-headed view, and are less likely to excuse wrongdoings by the president due to willful blindness. An unelected president is more likely to be cautious and wary of overstepping constitutional boundaries, and Congress is more likely to call the president out for violations, because they are the more representative branch. Moreover, this would refocus power and interest in state legislatures and create a separation from the popular vote that would enable electors to exercise a degree of independence as originally intended, which they currently do not out of fear of popular backlash. Overall, I believe these measures would be greatly beneficial for the election process. Unfortunately, at the moment this view is unpopular, so, for now, the country will either continue with the failing remains of the Electoral College system or move to national popular vote. And despite the fact that the system we currently use is pretty indefensible and serves no particular purpose because of all the changes it has undergone, I still prefer it to the national popular vote for one reason: it produces the outcomes I like. As much as I despise both political parties, I prefer Republicans to Democrats, and the Electoral College helps Republicans due to its favouring smaller states. I would prefer whichever system helps the candidates I want. You may be thinking, what about everyone's right to vote? What about their opinion? What about democracy? It's simple. I don't care. Because some things aren't up to a vote, regardless of how many people vote for them. These things are called rights. Even if everyone in the country votes to take away your freedom of speech, it doesn't matter. That's the nature of rights. They're unalienable. People can't take them away. So when a president has the power to violate my natural rights due to our departure from the Constitution, voting is irrelevant to me. I favour whatever system helps a candidate that will abuse my rights and freedoms the least. In that respect, the current system is better than the popular vote, but neither system is the answer. So I hope this has given you a better understanding of the Electoral College and the need to restore it, which in turn will help to repair our republic. If you have any questions, comments, or thoughts, please email me at the address in the description, theeconomyoftheuniverse@gmail.com. Next episode, I'll get more in depth on democracy and rights. Until then, I'll leave you with this thought. The consent of the governed isn't necessarily given by democracy, and democracy doesn't necessarily give the consent of the governed. Thank you.